My Lords, the UK has been described as one of the most nature-depleted countries on earth. And my friend, Professor Sapartha Dasgupta, wrote his famous Economics of Biodiversity, the Dasgupta Review, in February 2021. And he starts a review with this: we are facing a global crisis. We're totally dependent on the natural world. It supplies us with every oxygen-laden breath we take and every mouthful of food we eat, but we're currently damaging it so profoundly that many of its natural systems are now on the verge of breakdown. And I thank the Noble Lord Grayling for initiating this debate, a fellow alumnus of Sydney Sussex College, Cambridge. Thank you for your opening speech. And I go back to Professor Sapartha Dasgupta, who's just written a book this year, his new book on natural capital, the value of the world around us today. And he says that the demands we make of nature's goods and services far exceed her ability to supply them on a sustainable basis. The difference between the two is a measure of the human ecological overreach. And since 1950, the global economy has grown 15-fold. Absolute poverty has declined from 60% of the world at that time to 10% today. And the world population, this has happened in spite of it going up from 2.5 billion people to 8.1 billion people on this planet. So in many ways, he says, humanity has never had it so good. But, and this is the but, our global success has come with an increasing impoverished biosphere, including extinction of species. Currently, there are 100 to 1,000 times the average extinction rates at the moment that the world has seen for several million years. And in endorsing Sapartha Dasgupta's new book, David Attenborough, a national treasure, says, Partha Dasgupta provides the compass we urgently need. By bringing economics and ecology together, we can help save the natural world at what may be the last minute, and in doing so, save ourselves. And my Lord, when it comes to countryside policies, the reality is urban authorities receive 41% more government-funded spending per capita, while rural residents pay 20% more council tax per head. Would the Noble Lady the Minister acknowledge this? And evidence from the Dasgupta Review in 2021 highlights that biodiversity underpins rural productivity, food security, and long-term economic stability. And the UK Food Security Report 2024 found that biodiversity decline and climate shocks account for around 40% of food price inflation, demonstrating the economic stakes of countryside environmental management. And when it comes to taxation, we've heard this, I think Noble Lord Carrington mentioned it, that the change in law, where the government has now, with inheritance tax relief, doubled it basically for family businesses and for farmers. I think this will be a huge burden on family farm transfers and rural business succession. And the countryside and biodiversity policy agendas are increasingly interdependent. My Lords, the rural economy productivity, if you think about it, predominantly rural areas account for 21% of England's population, but only 15% of economic output. And when it comes to environmental land management schemes, the ELMSs, they remain the UK's primary mechanism for biodiversity recovery. But the SFI closure, funding uncertainty, and limited landscape recovery scale threaten progress towards the Environment Act 2021 targets. And would the Noble Lady the Minister agree with that, and that a more ambitious, stable, and better funded higher tier and LR programme is essential? And when it comes to the BNG, which the Noble Lord Grayling mentioned in his opening speech, it's one of the most important policy tools for reversing biodiversity decline while maintaining development and growth. Yet without stronger local authority capacity, coherent land use planning, and robust enforcement, BNG risks falling short of its ecological potential. So strengthening, monitoring, supporting councils, integrating BNG with broader ELMs and landscape recovery schemes will be essential. Would the Noble Lady the Minister agree with that? And when it comes to protected sites in the nature recovery network and essential pillars of biodiversity, weak site condition, limited enforcement, fragmented landscapes, insufficient local delivery capacity threaten progress. So we need to strengthen these areas. And my Lords, when it comes to the UK's species abundance targets, they're ambitious, but they are at risk as well. And with the critical point of biodiversity recovery, policies exist, but delivery remains slow due to funding gaps, workforce shortages, and uncertainty around long-term land use planning. My Lords, when it comes to the soil, I took part as President of the CBI in COP26 in Glasgow. I spoke at about 40 different events. Not one person mentioned the soil. And the Indian spiritual leader Sadhguru, a few years ago, set off from Parliament Square to raise awareness for the soil with a Save Soil campaign, so that 3 to 6% organic content should be in soil. My Lords, I conclude with this. Biodiversity hit to economies estimated at up to $25 trillion a year, just now reported in the FT last year by what is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change equivalent, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Economic Ecosystem Services. This tackling biodiversity loss, climate change, water scarcity, food insecurity, and health risks in isolation is not only compounding those issues, but driving spiral economic costs. And I conclude with this, my Lords. Siddhartha Dasgupta, who I started with, he says in his report, we are part of nature, not separate from it. We rely on nature to sustain us, yet we are degrading it faster than it can regenerate. Nature is our most precious asset.